If there's one thing that cannot be argued about polling data over the last two presidential election cycles, it's that one side's numbers coming into election day have been understated, and not by a small margin. Now, in 2016, that translated to a surprise win for Donald Trump. And in 2020, well, Trump didn't win, but he got a lot closer than the polls suggested that he would. And now, in 2024, something different is happening. We've actually got polls showing Donald Trump leading in the national popular vote, something that's not happened before. So the question becomes, if the polls have the same error that they've had in the last two election cycles that have disfavored Trump, and he brings in a surprise, how big is the surprise going to be this time? Because this is a map right now that might actually happen. And this is what we might wake up to Wednesday morning. And for that, we've got Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen here to help break it down. Renegade Online. Big blue horses for 10. Look down ballot at Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania. I think maybe one of those might have been, maybe should have been a different
it's a
state.
double focus on Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe Minnesota, and Pennsylvania going to that Rust Belt. Blue candidates are comfortably ahead. These folks habitually go hard left. There's nothing concrete showing Trump cracking a blue wall. Polls are off. Be wary. Leading us perfectly into this, because I wanted to get to some of the individual battleground polling data. So let's take a look at that. And big blue horses, again, look down ballot at the Rust Belt states. Blue candidates are comfortably ahead. Mm-hmm. There's nothing concrete showing Trump cracking a blue wall. So let's talk about your polling and the polling in the battleground states. And then maybe the difference between people that would vote for president and break one way and break another down ballot. Because that happens everywhere. I've observed it here in Louisiana for many, many years. What do you think on this?
Okay, first let me say, I think if you asked any pollster if you'd rather be graded on your national or your state numbers, they'd all say national. There's been like 1 million people polled this cycle on a national level, and really, in the grand scheme of things, the national numbers are all pretty tight. They all show Trump's doing better than he's ever done before. The state polling also shows he's done better than he's ever done before, but it's also perennially errors to the left, quite big, between 3 and 5 points in the last two cycles. So people kind of expect that pattern to hold up, probably another miss to the left in the state polls because it's Trump and it's hard to poll Trump. That's what everybody says. I find it less hard to poll Trump, but I do find state polling hard. Try and just go through this really quick. There will always be polling. Polling is going to be harder and harder, however. We need pollsters because without pollsters, you'd be Venezuela. Okay? That's just a fact. And so you can't really get a representative sample from one place across all of America now. So people are doing alternative methods of data collection by texting people survey links online, by going to online panel aggregators. We still do landline robodials for some of our data. Other people use cell phone live operators. They all have their pluses and minuses. We right now are balancing landline phones. There's still 90 million people and about 500,000 people who respond to our surveys. And that's a lot compared to Ipsos only has like 50,000 people in their panel. And then we also take online data panel aggregators. Now, those people are younger, more urban, more minority, and they're also liars. And so part of the problem is they'll overestimate how much they're likely to vote. They may not even be qualified. Everybody's dealing with this problem. In fact, most of the people that have dodgy polls right now are 100% online only. And you got to put traps in there to catch if they're not reading. You've got to be very careful about how you collect the data. And a lot of these people probably don't even know what Republican and Democrat means. So the issue is if they get to the head-to-head matchup and they're like, oh, I know Trump or Harris, and they have no idea who David McCormick is. They don't know what a Republican is. And what happens time after time is they're going to go to the polls and Republicans will benefit from the straight ticket effect. But there are also people in Arizona who are Republican and are going to vote for Ruben Gallego. It just happens. The problem is that nobody really knows how much, and I'll go into Arizona and find that Lake's down 2, then I'll go into Arizona again and find that she's down 8 points. So that's a problem everybody's dealing with. I think Republicans are doing way better down ballot than any people's polling, even my own, suggests. And then I have had these swing states. I've had McCormick tied. I've had Eric Hovde up 1. We're probably going to have Republicans picking up Ohio and Montana. So those are very obvious potential pickups for Republicans. And then on top of that, there's other races that are pretty close. So Mike Rogers is pretty close. I had a poll where Sam Brown was only down 2 points, I think, in Nevada. So we could be looking at a pretty Republican Senate. But I do think it's safe to say it's going to be a Republican Senate.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, how big is that margin, right?
Right.
And again, it's depending on the polls, depending on what things look like down ballot, because there's this attitude out there that, well, this is who I know I want for president. And yeah, Congress sucks, but my guy's okay. And there's because that's where I think, in my opinion, politics truly becomes more localized, even though it shouldn't necessarily be, because it is Congress and it has obvious national impacts there. But I've seen, you will have split ballot tickets like this where you're voting one way at the top and another way going on down. And Big Blue Horses did say he did mean to include Minnesota in that previous super chat, not Pennsylvania twice. So, but let's talk a little bit about that, I guess, from that perspective, because these individual battleground states, right? Let's maybe take us through from the battlegrounds that you feel most confident in right now.
Here, let me just share.
Yeah, go ahead and share what you got.
This is all of our state polling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm more confident in the September and October numbers, to be honest with you, but I still think, the most recent final ones are pretty valid. Wisconsin looks, I'll go from the bottom up because it's got Virginia down there. Wisconsin looks really safe for Trump. Mark Halperin's he's been talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really bad because, if she loses the entire Sun Belt, she's got to get at least one Rust Belt state. And Virginia is within the margin of error now. And I hit it. This is 2 good polls I've had that have Harris up in the margin of error. So again, Virginia, I'm telling you, I think Trump's going to outperform my polling. So Virginia could be a toss-up.
So, okay. So early in the night, if Virginia becomes a toss-up.
Early in the night.
So we're I don't know how to rephrase that now without saying early in the night again. We'll say it one more time. If Virginia's really close, at that point, do we start saying, oh my gosh, there's a 2-point shift, and start looking for that through the rest of the... Oh, so you think North Carolina will see that too?
Well, I'm saying you're going to have North Carolina and Virginia numbers coming in simultaneously, right? And one of them's either going to look bad for Trump, or they're both going to look good for Trump, right? Or they're both going to look bad for Trump. If they're both bad for Trump, that's a problem. Because again, he can win with Pennsylvania, but he should not be losing North Carolina, because I had it up Trump +5 and another one at Trump +3. And I had Georgia at Trump +6. I just don't see how. Listen, North Carolina went to Trump by 1.5 points 4 years ago. How did the entire country move multiple points to the right? And then North Carolina, just like Iowa, miraculously were the only states that moved left. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and you're talking about the questionable Iowa thing that came out earlier today. Yeah, that's kind of bizarre. Nobody's been campaigning there, and you would think that internal polling data from whether it's Trump or Harris, they know what's going on and where it's happening, right? And they're going to see opportunities of, we need to go here, we need to go there. I think somebody put up a picture of a list of, all the places that Kamala was stopping today or tomorrow versus Trump. And Trump's got 3 or 4 things on his schedule. Kamala had 1 in Michigan. And Trump's last stop is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And that is Monday night. You have to look at it from the perspective, or at least I would think you would, that if a candidate is plugging away that hard in certain places, they know that they have a chance, or they know they have to save it. And if all of the traditionally reputable polling is showing that, especially in the Rust Belt right now, talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and lesser so Minnesota, but we can talk about that, that Trump is doing very well compared to 2016, even in 2020. With those states, let's start with the Rust Belt there. I mean, like, is it likely that if Trump wins a Pennsylvania or a Wisconsin, or especially a Michigan, putting Minnesota aside for a second, but if he wins Michigan, I don't see how he doesn't also pick up Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, because Michigan to me seems like the leftmost of the three.
Yeah, Rich Barris has been trumpeting that off the rooftops, and I agree with it. Michigan's been a hard one for me to pull. I don't like the samples I got there. I had to spend a lot of time trying to figure out why they're all jacked up. I think Trump is doing well in Pennsylvania, +3 and +2 here. I think he does a point or two better than that. And I think Wisconsin I have right in line. So I think it's safe to say, especially with the endorsement he got there, Michigan's probably looking better than this. And when Michigan should be her safest state on this list, in my opinion, not including Virginia and stuff, but of the 7 battlegrounds.
Right.
If she's doing events there, I mean, she should be in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I think they pulled everything from North Carolina, so they gave that up and are focused on Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I don't think they can win. I really don't.
What percentage do they have to win by in Pennsylvania, in your estimation, for shenanigans to not happen?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, it's all about what are the
Is it 2? Is it 3%? Where do they just phone it in and say, you know what, we're not doing it this time?
I think there's a lot of variables that we would be unable to list them all. And I think Shapiro is one of those variables, just to name one of many.
Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania.
And right? When you say that, you mean Shapiro might not be happy about how that VP selection went?
Or interested ambitions for the next cycle, or like, who knows? But what I can tell you is everybody's saying, look at all the fraud. I think it's a great sign that we're seeing it pop up, right? Like, it's a great sign this stuff is being, like Ron said it's being reported and challenged in courts. Mm-hmm. And they don't have to win them all. But if there's a culture out there that things are not the same as they were back in 2020, or there's less of a ubiquitously held feeling that their team's going to win, I mean, I think it changes the calculus. I don't know.
Like I said, I tend to pay attention, especially to where the candidates are going and spending most of their time in the last few days. And granted, it's a lot easier for Trump or Kamala Harris to bounce around between 3 or 4 states that are basically contiguous geographically, bing, 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 back and forth, versus taking time out to fly literally to the other side of the country to go at Nevada, which they've been to in this last week. Trump has been there, but I don't think he's got anything in Nevada on the books for the next couple of days, because he's trying to keep everything tight for time and do it most in that Rust Belt. But even Nevada, which what are your thoughts on Nevada in terms of, that seems to me to be, at least in terms of a demo, probably at least about as left as Michigan. So if Nevada is coming back to the center, at least, suspecting that Trump might be able to pull that off,
I think he thinks he's winning Nevada.
I can't get the same impression.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trump's got limited resources when you compare his campaign to Kamala Harris. So he's being judicious about how he uses them. He has way more resources than me, though. So those people are spending a lot of time exactly pushing the envelope. And I know that their internal polling kind of looks like mine, but is a little to the right of it. Yeah. And he's going to put his resources where he feels he needs them. So I think watching where he spends his time, and I think you could probably say, and unless I haven't been watching it super closely, but my feeling is that it's offensive, not defensive.
I tend to think so. I mean, so right now, you've mentioned that you believe, and I agree with you, that North Carolina. Are we going to fill this in? Yeah. I guess so. Let's do the create your own map thing.
Nobody does this. Only on the Valiant Renegade channel will you ever see this sort of electronic wizardry, folks.
You should put a map in the thumbnail, though. It'll get you an extra 100,000 clicks.
Yeah, there you go. That's true, right? So let's
make sure you put a Trump face too.
And a Trump face, right? Jonas, you taking notes? There you go. let's take these out for a second. Let's
Okay,
put, I
now
mean,
we're
it's
good.
within the margin of error. So basically anything that's within, let's call it a 3% MOE, right? So it could go either way. We know where things are trending by the numbers. They seem to be trending in Trump's favor.
Here's the problem with that. If you say, okay, it's got to be outside of 3, then we're only filling in Georgia.
Right.
So go ahead and fill in Georgia.
Well, I guess that was my point. Is let's go from what you think right now is. Let's go from the safest that you think this is. I think done. I think this is the best, easiest win for Trump, and then we'll work our way down. So let's start with Georgia
go from the outside in. Yep.
Yep. So
and then,
Georgia.
Yep. All right. So now next safest for anybody is probably Minnesota for Harris.
Okay. Fair enough.
And then North Carolina for Trump.
Okay.
Then we're looking at Wisconsin for Trump.
Wisconsin.
I have that at +3 in my last poll.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nevada and Arizona for Trump were both +2. And that's a win right there.
Yeah, that's 278. Everything else at this point is effectively lagniappe. And I want everybody to notice that you just put it there. There's no Michigan. There's no Pennsylvania.
Right.
And no Virginia, no New Hampshire, no New Mexico. They're all still floating out there, right?
This is, by the way, why I've always thought Wisconsin is so overlooked in the news coverage.
The importance, too, and this is why it's referred to as the blue wall, right? Because, and that's just it. Take Wisconsin out. Let's throw this back to toss-up. And if that's Trump's ceiling right there, he's lost. It's 268, right? Again, no Pennsylvania, no Michigan, nothing else in there. And that's what makes the difference is those 10 electoral votes is breaching that blue wall, any one of those blue wall states. I mean, you take the whole...
We should have turned New Mexico blue, by the way. Sorry. That's Harris +5.
Yeah, I don't see that going anywhere. So, yeah, there we go. But still, the point is that at that point going in that order, Trump still gets to 278 without Pennsylvania and without Michigan. And then if the polling, from there, okay, let's talk about this. Now, he has reached a threshold according to your most likely states falling in his favor. Then what?
Okay, well, so then we're still at +2s. So Trump picks up Pennsylvania, Harris picks up Virginia. And then we're at +1s, and Harris picks up both Michigan and New Hampshire.
Okay.
Now, that I would consider, I think it's all going to be to the right of my polls. Maybe not all of them, but I was not going out on a limb when I did this stuff. So if you move everything to the right, 2 points, okay?
Right.
Arizona's still safe. Georgia's still safe. Michigan flips to Trump.
Yep. Got it.
Minnesota is within a point now.
Yeah.
Right.
Minnesota is within a point. And again, that's... Minnesota, it's a very, very left-leaning state. Obviously, that's where Tim Walz is from. It is the only state that didn't vote for Ronald Reagan. It voted for Mondale because that's where Mondale was from. So Minnesota's got a heck of a history for being blue.
Which one's more likely to flip, Minnesota or Virginia?
I think Virginia. And the reason I would say that, the polling is about the same that I did. I've polled Virginia more. And Youngkin won, right? So I think that probably is an interesting precedent.
Virginia is still out there, and New Hampshire. So
if everything was 2 points to the right, New Hampshire would flip Trump.
That's okay. That's what I thought as well.
And Virginia now becomes dead tied.
Dead tied. Okay, so we'll leave that alone. But everything that I've been seeing, most people kind of putting the numbers together based on your polling. I keep seeing the number 312 pop up, and that didn't include New Hampshire. So 312, and I've seen some as high as 329. Again, not wanting to get over our skis because if you're a Trump supporter and you want this to happen, then you still have to get out there Tuesday and actually make it happen. It's not just going to happen on its own. So don't everybody get complacent with things and think that this is in the bag, it's a done deal, because the turnout models themselves, they will come to fruition only if you turn out. Figure that one out. So you've actually got to get out there and do it. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.